Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Dhanavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Dhanavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Dhanavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Dhanavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stota Sat Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikho Sri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Braj Bhumi Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Go Premanandi Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming for the class. We're on the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Attaining the Supreme, and text number 12. Sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya mano hṛdi nirudhya ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām. Sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya mano hṛdi nirudhya ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām. sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, mūrdhni prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām, sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām, sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām, sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām, sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām. Vaishnavis. Sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām, sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya, mano hṛdi nirudhya ca, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam, āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām. Sarva-dvārāṇi, all the doors of the body. Saṁyamya, controlling. Manaḥ, the mind. Hṛdi, in the heart. Nirudhya, confining. Cha, also. Mūrdhni, on the head. Ādhāya, fixing. ātmanaḥ, of the soul. Prāṇam, the life air. Āsthitaḥ, situated in. Yoga-dhāraṇām, the yogic situation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life ear at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. So please repeat. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses, fixing the mind on the heart, and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. Purport. To practice yoga, as suggested here, one first has to close all the doors of sense enjoyment. This practice is called pratyāhāra, or withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. The sense organs for acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch, should be fully controlled and should not be allowed to engage in sense gratification. In this way, the mind focuses on the Supersoul in the heart, and the life force is raised to the top of the head. In the 6th chapter, this process is described in detail. But as mentioned before, This practice is not practical in this age. The best process is Kṛṣṇa consciousness. If one is always able to fix his mind on Kṛṣṇa in devotional service, it is very easy for him to remain in an undisturbed transcendental trance or in samadhi. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandayaham Sri Guruho Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Kṛṣṇa Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitamscha Hey Kṛṣṇa Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesa Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Jai Sri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare sarva-dvārāṇi saṁyamya mano hṛdi nirudhya cha mūrdhya ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. So here, this whole chapter is called Attaining the Supreme, which means it's about how we can, was mentioned by Arjuna in one of his questions, how can we remember you at the time of death? So this is the topic of this chapter, is how to remember the Lord at the time of the death. Now this particular section is called Sat Chakra Yoga, which is a mechanical system of meditation, where it's also known in modern times, especially as Kundalini Yoga, where they rise the life air up through the 6 or 7 chakras to the top of the head. So that's not our process. As Prabhupada mentions here, it's not at all possible in this age today. And also, he mentioned in yesterday's verse how it requires brahmacharya, and he says brahmacharya is also impossible in this age today. We know there are some Naistiki brahmacharis who are very good brahmacharis, but it is very rare in this age to even hold brahmacharya. The example is given as of Ajamal. Ajamal was a very nice brahmachari when he was being trained by a spiritual master. He got married to a very nice, beautiful, and very obliging wife, and he was doing nicely in his Brahminical services until he was disturbed by a prostitute and a lower class man in the forest when he went out to collect things for his father's puja that day. And Prabhupada mentions in the purports there how that was a rare occasion for Ajamal. He was tempted just by one incident, whereas here we're surrounded by all types of temptations, right from the early school. They're even giving contraceptives in school, which seems to be encouraging these things. And from the billboards on the street, even in God's own country in Kerala, you've got all these billboards also of half-naked women. In the country where they they pride themselves on being so Vedic and so correct. Still the age of Kali is creeping in, and these billboards are on the side of the street, and you can't avoid them. Selling anything, building materials, you've got to have a half-naked woman to sell building materials. So, I'm obviously not an expert in this Satkriya yoga. I'm not even trying to be a yoga. But Srila Prabhupada did give a class on these two verses, 12 and 13. And also he mentions these verses in Easy Journey to the other planets. In his class he spoke about how this particular process, chakra yoga, when a yogi becomes expert, he can choose where he wants to go. Now, a little later in this chapter, it talks about leaving the body in the light part of the month, and the light part of the fortnight, and the light part of the year also, when the sun is rising. And if you do that, you can get to the transcendental world. And if you leave in the dark part, then you will end up in the moon. So Prabhupada in his class was talking a bit about achieving the moon, because of course when he was giving classes, this moon landing was very much popular. Even some of the devotees were kind of swayed because they heard that the satellite had landed on the moon, and Prabhupada said, no, it's impossible. And some devotees got very disturbed by that. So Prabhupada here talks about, in Easy Journey to Other Planets, he talks about going to the moon. And he says in this age, it's not possible to go to the moon. And he modifies that a little bit. He said, even if it's possible for 1 or 2 people to go to the moon, they can't live there. The atmosphere is not suitable. What are you going to do there? You can't invite your friends and have a party. You can't do anything. You're not advancing society. You're not advancing technology. You've just wasted your time and effort and millions of dollars just to go to the moon, and all you can do is you have to come back again. So it's, even if you got there, it's not at all practical. And of course he gives the example that even for him to go to America, he had to learn something about America. And he said he had to dress appropriately for America. Now of course we know Prabhupada landed in America wearing his sannyas robes. And his godbrothers were trying to tell him, no, when you go to America, you have to wear pants and shirt, and you have to eat with knife and fork. You have to look like the Americans. But Prabhupada said, no, I'm not going to learn anything from them. I'm going to teach them. So Prabhupada set the example, but in this one he's using that example. If you want to go even to another country, you have to find out what it's like. You have to find out what the qualifications you need to get there are. Because to go anywhere you need qualifications, especially to America. It's quite difficult to get there and get a visa from India. And like that. And he said even in the material world, even if you're thinking about the environment suitable for your living, you can think of deep in the water. The fish in the water are suited to the water. You can't bring them out onto the land because they will die. And he says similarly, if you want to go and live in the water, you can't. You have to get a body suitable. You can wear a snorkel and stay in there for a few hours, but you can't actually go and live in the water. Even in this material world, you can't choose exactly where you want to live. He made that point very strongly. If you want to live in a different place, then you have to come in a body suitable for it. If you want to live in the water, you have to come back in the body of an aquatic. So if you want to go to the higher planets like the moon, you have to come back in a body that's suitable for going to the moon. The atmosphere is different. He said that at the most, what advantage you're going to get, you're going to be able to live a bit longer. Because in the moon, that's a planet of the demigods, so they live much, much longer. 1 day of theirs is equal to 6 months of ours. So, and their years are much longer as well. So they live a much, much longer time. So Prabhupada is making the point that this yogic process, this is a mechanical process. In this age of Kali, as he says, it cannot be perfected. But even if it's perfected, what is the gain? So let's try and take a little bit from Srila Prabhupada's Easy Journey to Other Planets. This was one of his early books, and a very popular book. He says, Srimad Bhagavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all planets of the universe. When the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum, there is every chance of this force bursting out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc., as these places are known as the seventh orbit of vital force. But yogis can block out these holes by complete suspension of ear. The yogi then concentrates the vital force in the middle position between the eyebrows. So this is the exact process that's been described here. At this position, the yogi can think of the planet into which he wants to enter after leaving the body. He can then decide whether he wants to go to the abode of Kṛṣṇa in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world, or travel to the higher planets in the material universe. A perfect yogi is at liberty to do either. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is as easy as an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. So Prabhupada spends some time on this, how the material scientists are spending so much effort and so much trouble to try and get to the moon. But the yogi can get there in less than a fraction of the second. It's faster than the mind. He said the transcendental process of traveling is faster than the mind. And we know how fast the mind can go. The mind can go from here to America in less than a second. Instantly, our mind will go somewhere else. And transcendental travel is faster than that. In less than a second, he can reach the transcendental Vaikuntha and appear there in a completely spiritual body, which will be suitable for the spiritual atmosphere. He simply has to desire to leave his gross and finer material bodies. So that's another point that Prabhupada discusses, is that in order to go from this environment where we're living in this body to another in the material world, we leave our physical body and we take another physical body that's suitable for the new environment. But we take our subtle body with us, because that's holding all our desires and that's carrying us through. But if we want to go to the transcendental Vaikuntha planets, we have to leave our subtle body behind as well. We let go of both the gross and subtle forms of our body, and we go completely in a spiritual body. And when we get there, we will have a body the same in quality as Kṛṣṇa's, Satchidananda. So Prabhupada goes on to explain, of course, a man has free will. And so if he wants to, he can enjoy life in Brahmapad, the position of Brahma, or visit Siddhaloka, and the material perfected beings who have ability to control gravity, space, time, etc. So many yogis like that idea of having yogic perfections and being able to manipulate material energy. To visit the higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, but need only give up the grosser matter, the material body. Man-made satellites and mechanical space vehicles will never be able to carry human beings to the planets of outer space. They cannot go even to the moon because the atmosphere is different. Every planet has a particular atmosphere, and the material body has to be exactly adapted to the climatic condition of that planet. The change of dress, if one wants to go to another place or to the spiritual world, it happens automatically at the time of death. We don't have to cultivate what sort of body we have. And Prabhupada goes on to explain this process of Kṛṣṇa consciousness that he's concluding the purport today with. The best process is Kṛṣṇa consciousness. If one is always able to fix his mind in Kṛṣṇa in devotional service, it's very easy for him to remain in an undisturbed transcendental trance or samadhi. But even before this, Kṛṣṇa had described how this perfect yogi is also meditating on the Supreme Lord. In the verse before. One who meditates on me is that's a bhakti one, this one here. One should meditate upon that Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond this material universe. One who at the time of death fixes his life ear between the eyebrows, and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, he will certainly attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this process is actually intended to go back to the Vaikunthas, at the least in the Vaikunthas. Srila Prabhupada explains in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita how even the Patanjali system nowadays is a process of yoga, and when they meditate on something impersonal or something imaginary. But if you read 6.22 Purport, it's a collection of verses, 20 to 23. Srila Prabhupada mentions this Patanjali system, and it said Patanjali himself is actually saying one must meditate on the Supreme Person, that this is personal. He specifically uses the word Chit Shakti. Chit Shakti, or internal potency, is transcendental. And he goes on to explain that this must be personal, because to experience something, even to experience bliss, as the Brahmavadis aspire for, there must be someone who can experience it. So therefore, you don't merge into this oneness, because how do you experience bliss if you've merged and you've lost your identity? It's not possible. There must be something to experience, and there must be an experiencer. And in devotional service, we have three things. We have bhakti, bhagavan, and bhakta. So bhakti is our process, which Prabhupada in the Easy Journey to Other Planets is about to describe. Bhakti is the process, Bhagavan is the object of our meditation, and Bhakta is us. We're engaged in this process. So these three things exist eternally. They're eternally existent. And we have to take up this process, and then we'll come to realize them by full knowledge. Prabhupada stresses that the easiest way is, of course, chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because that will purify our mind. So Prabhupada, in the Easy Journey to Other Planet, he goes through these first 20 items that are listed as the process of devotional service in the Nectar of Devotion. Accepting a bona fide spiritual master, taking initiation from him, serving the spiritual master and satisfying him. Because by such service, we gain the good wishes of the spiritual master. So everywhere in devotional service, we're putting in our effort, not because by our effort alone we can achieve anything wonderful, but because we put in our effort to please the spiritual master and to please Kṛṣṇa, then we get their mercy, and they will help us. Prabhupada writes in this, the spiritual master must be satisfied in all respects, because simply by his good wishes, a candidate can make wonderful progress along the path. So then, next item is intelligent candidate asks intelligent questions to the spiritual master. In accordance with the principles of authorities, the spiritual master replies. The candidate should try and follow the footsteps of the great sages who have attained success by practicing this method, but should not superficially imitate. So we should not try and become yogis just because one of our acharyas was a yogi. We should not artificially try and become Haridas Thakur. Prabhupada says one should not superficially imitate them, but should follow them sincerely in terms of the particular time and circumstances. And of course the guru, whether Diksha Guru or Siksha Guru, is our guide to how to adapt to particular time and circumstances. Like Srila Prabhupada as our Acharya has given us 16 rounds to chant. He hasn't told us to try and be like Haridas Thakur and chant for 22 hours a day. So our spiritual master will give us the adaptation for time, place and circumstances. Number 6, a devotee must be prepared to change his habits in terms of the instructions contained in the books of authority. So, coming to devotional service, in the beginning when we are preaching, we say, just add Kṛṣṇa, just start chanting. Continue doing what you're doing and just start chanting, just add Kṛṣṇa. But when we get a little bit more serious, we have to be prepared to change our habits, Prabhupada's saying here. So this process of surrender, we accept things favorable for Kṛṣṇa consciousness and we give up things that are unfavorable. So even if we were in religious life before we came to Kṛṣṇa consciousness, some of these things have to be given up because they're not helpful. If we get too attached to following every little rule and regulation, we lose the goal of Kṛṣṇa. The devotee should always live in a spiritual atmosphere. He must be satisfied with maintenance and not trying to amass more wealth. He must observe fasting such as Ekadasi, etc. And then there were 10 negative items, things to avoid. Avoid the association of non-devotees, etc., etc. And then Prabhupada goes on to mention the 5 most important things. Association with the devotees. Prabhupada mentions how we can associate with devotees. Associate is made possible, the 6 loving exchanges, by hearing attentively, by asking relevant questions, by supplying them food and accepting food, by giving charity and accepting from them what they offer. Number 2, one should chant the holy name of the Lord in all circumstances and try and avoid the 10 offenses. Number 3, we should hear the transcendental topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada says this is possible by hearing lectures from bona fide devotees and by authorized translations of the Bhagavatam. One should make his home at Mathura, or one should make his home as good as Mathura by installing a deity of the Lord to be worshipped by all members of the family after proper initiation from the spiritual master. One should worship the installed deity with attention and devotion, so one's home becomes a replica of the Lord's abode. This is made possible by the direction of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada goes on to stress, these above 5 mentioned items of devotional activities are so spiritually powerful that their performance by a devotee, even in the preliminary stage, can very quickly promote the sincere executor to the stage of bhava. So these 5 items, that was 1, associate with devotees, 2, chant the holy name of the Lord, 3, listen to the Bhagavatam, 4, make his home as good as Mathura, and 5, worship the deity. They are so spiritually powerful that by their performance can quickly promote the executor to the stage of bhava. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that this stage of bhav, or love of Godhead, makes one fit to be transferred to the spiritual sky after leaving the material body. So if we attain that stage, we can go back to the material body, to the spiritual sky, by the easy process of bhakti yoga. So in the second chapter, Prabhupada goes on to explain again, as is explained later on in this chapter, the Bhagavad Gita, the difference between the material world and the spiritual world. And the material world is full of miseries. No matter where you go, Prabhupada, Kṛṣṇa in the Bhagavad Gita goes on to describe the Brahma's day and Brahma's night and the length of the material world. But even in Brahma's life, there are miseries. There are the same birth, death, old age, and disease. They follow us. You go to the higher planets, you may live a little longer, but death will still come and you will still have to return back to this life or to a lower life even. So Kṛṣṇa, Srila Prabhupada paraphrases Kṛṣṇa. How one goes to the moon, how one comes back is a great story described in Vedic literature. It is not a new process, but the aim of our Kṛṣṇa conscious society is different. We're not going to waste our valuable time. So he paraphrases Kṛṣṇa's Bhagavad Gita as saying, Kṛṣṇa says, don't waste your time attempting to go to this planet or to that planet. What will you gain? Your material miseries will follow you wherever you go. So that's the conclusion of this chapter. Kṛṣṇa is talking about the dukkhaliyam sasvatam. This whole material world is a place of miseries. So Prabhupada's summary is very nice. Your material miseries will follow you wherever you go. Prabhupada quotes 9:25, Yanti deva vrata devan, pitrin yanti prativrataha, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti madhyajinopiyam bimam. And he does another paraphrase for the translation. One can go to the moon, or even to the sun, or millions and trillions of other planets. Or if one is too material attached, he may remain here. But those who are my devotees will come to me. Initiation into Kṛṣṇa consciousness ensures that the student ultimately can reach the supreme planet, Kṛṣṇa Loka. We are not sitting idly. We're also attempting to go to other planets, but we are not wasting our time. So all material planets, no matter all planetary systems in the material world are temporary, are full of miseries, but in the Vaikunthas, in the spiritual world, one can achieve eternal life, bliss and knowledge. The purpose of our Kṛṣṇa conscious movement is to propagate this advanced scientific idea to people in general, and the process is very simple. Simply by chanting the holy names of God, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One cleanses the dirt from his heart and gains an understanding that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and that it is his duty to serve him. This process is very pleasant. We chant Hare Krishna mantra, we dance rhythmically, we eat nice prasad. While enjoying this life, we are preparing to enter the kingdom of God in our next life. Prabhupada has he mentions also in his class on this verse, the actual translation of the word yoga is plus. We live minus God, so yoga means plus God, which is another way of putting it. We learn that yoga means to connect with God. But Prabhupada simplified it and says it just means plus. At the moment we are minus God or minus the Supreme. But if we make ourselves plus, connected, then our human form of life is perfect. At the time of death, one must be prepared. Students, for example, prepare 2 or 5 years to get a certificate, a degree. And similarly, we must prepare for the examination at the time of death. Okay, what else is here? That I've already covered. And Srila Prabhupada also summarizes these last 2 lines of this sloka, and he paraphrases it, ādhāyātmanaḥ prāṇam āsthito yoga-dhāraṇām. He says the meaning of that means the perfection of yoga is to transfer oneself to the spiritual world. Okay, so I think we can stop here and see if anyone has any questions about today's class, or you can add something that I've missed out on. Hare Krishna. How do we come to know we've reached the stage to go to the spiritual world? The stage of bhava. So this is a very high stage. Now the interesting thing is when devotees are advanced, they think they're not advanced. So how will we know? If we actually become advanced, we'll think we're lower than the stool in the street. So we won't think we're qualified. I mean, even we have examples. When Madhavendra Puri was leaving his body, he was saying, oh, I've missed my chance of getting Kṛṣṇa. And then this disciple of his started preaching to him, oh, Kṛṣṇa is, just meditate on the Brahman, you're fine. Why are you being upset? And all of the really advanced devotees are thinking that they're low. But of course, at the time of death, they're not. They're peaceful. Like we heard from Radhacharan Prabhu a couple of days ago. He was talking about when Bhubaneswara Prabhu left his body. And he questioned Bhubaneswara Prabhu and he said, is there anything you need? And Bhubaneswara Prabhu says, no, there's nothing I want at all. And he just sat looking at his picture of Kṛṣṇa Balaram and just very peacefully left his body. So even though at the time of death one is in so much of pain, it's hard to imagine for us. We're in the material world and we feel pain. And they described that death is like 1,000 scorpions biting you or something. But at the same time, we become distant from it. Like, if you happen to be arguing with someone in your family, you can't get away from the argument. You can't not be upset. All this tension is around you. But if you see someone on this other side of the street arguing, you can just walk past. So we become distant from the effects of the material body. Even the pleasures and pains, we can become a little bit distant from it. We can't imagine that now, but we have to realize that Kṛṣṇa says also, I can't remember where that is. Prabhupada says that Kṛṣṇa says, if you don't remember me, then I will help you. I will come and get you. Prabhupada promises to come and get us, but Kṛṣṇa himself will. Somebody said it, I can't remember where I was reading it. Kṛṣṇa will come and force his way into our minds so we can't think of anything but him. So at the moment we don't need to worry about our level of achievement. We know at the moment it's very far away from us because we haven't even got rid of our anarthas. So first we have to work on getting rid of our anarthas, anartha nivritti. Now that's the process that's given to us by our acharyas. The Bhaktivinoda Thakur taught two processes. He taught an external process where you meditate on your spiritual body when you come to that level. And he taught an internal process where you work on getting rid of anarthas. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada gave us only this internal process, which is as described by Raghunath Das Goswami in Manashiksha, or even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in his preaching to his mind. He also preached to his mind. Vaishnava K, who are you? Who are you to think you're a Vaishnava? He spoke like that, and he used some of the similar things. So our process is to try and work on becoming a good Vaishnava, serving the Vaishnavas, serving the deities, and chanting the holy name, and worry about that we're following the process as best we can. And Kṛṣṇa, a spiritual master, will help. Kṛṣṇa will help. Kṛṣṇa comes as the spiritual master. Kṛṣṇa also comes and directs, makes sure the spiritual master is available to us. He comes from inside as the Chaitya Guru and makes sure we recognize the spiritual master. So we just have to sincerely follow the process and trust that the process is going to bring us to Kṛṣṇa. And we have to a certain extent, we do have to know our level of advancement, because we shouldn't pretend to be more advanced than we are. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that. He talks about niyamagraha. He says that imagining that we're on a higher level than we are is like standing on a cloud. If we're following the process, we're on a staircase. We know that the next step is up, and to go backwards is to go down. So it's a simple, the process is given by our acharyas, and we follow the staircase, and we just at whatever pace we can, we gradually go up the staircase. And if we happen to fall down, we just pick ourselves up and carry on going up the staircase. But if we imagine ourselves to be more advanced than we are, it's like standing on a cloud. We can't step that way, we can't step that way. Every way we step, we're going to fall down. So we have to realize where we are. We have to be a little realizing what our stage is. And this is mostly by our advancement in Krishna consciousness can mostly be gauged by how much we're detached from sense gratification, from trying to enjoy life, from trying to be comfortable, from things that are going on around us, how much externals are disturbing us. And we'll realize that over time, these external things disturb us less. We still think we're not doing well, but if you look back 6 months before, 1 year before, 2 years before, you'll see that we're making progress. We're climbing that staircase. That's really all we need to worry about, is that we're on the staircase and we're heading in the right direction. Is that okay? Any other comments or questions? Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Here comes the mic.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Mataji, thanks a lot for very brief description regarding this slokas of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Regarding the detachment and here of this meditation regarding you were saying, if somebody is following the Krishna consciousness, along with that, if they want to do the meditation and they do the meditation on the Krishna simply, not on the impersonal things, not on the imaginary thing. As you know, Kṛṣṇa is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So is it okay? Or only we should focus on the chanting of 16 rounds, and along with that, if we do the meditation as per, the guidance as Maharishi Patanjali has described in the yogic way of doing the meditation. And if we do the meditation along with this bhakti process, as you told regarding the quote you have told regarding Prabhupada has described that one should do the bhakti along with the deity worshipping, Srimad Bhagavatam listening. Along with all this process, if we continue the meditation part, so is it okay?
So actually, right throughout, even in the Bhagavad Gita and right throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are descriptions of what the Supersoul looks like, what Kṛṣṇa like. They're very elaborate descriptions. So you must follow the authorized process. You can read the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are descriptions of he wears the yellow dress, he's got the bluish color, there's descriptions of his ornaments and everything else. So you can certainly read those descriptions in the Bhagavatam, the authorized scriptures. And we must of course take up chanting and maintain chanting as our main priority, because it's given as the process for this age. Kalo nastyeva 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 gata anyata. It's the perfect process for this age of Kali. So that must be the focus. And while we're chanting, we should concentrate on chanting and not try and add anything to it. Because our process... One devotee, there were different times devotees asked Prabhupada about this process. But one time a devotee says, "Oh, should we meditate on Kṛṣṇa when we're chanting?" Prabhupada said, that will come. That is required. When we perfect our chanting, Kṛṣṇa will appear in our minds. Kṛṣṇa is non-different from the name. So when we perfect our chanting, Kṛṣṇa will be there, because the name is there and Kṛṣṇa is there. But while we're chanting, we should concentrate on this process of chanting. Another time a devotee says, Prabhupada, I don't know what I should think about while I'm chanting. My mind goes here and there. Should I think about Kṛṣṇa? Should I think about his form? Should I think about this, that? Prabhupada said, what has the mind got to do with it? You chant with your tongue and you hear with your ears. So for our chanting, keep your 16 rounds sacred, follow it very carefully, and concentrate on the favorable mood. Prabhupada has given us the meaning of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for us. O energy of the Lord, O Hara, please engage me in the Lord's service. Please accept me. As in Sri Shikshastakam verse 5, Ayi nanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishabhe bhavambaro kripaya tavapada pankaja stita duli sajisam vichintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I fall into this horrible ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as an atom of dust at your lotus feet. So our mood should be like that while we're chanting. But certainly the Bhagavatam is there for us to read. The descriptions of the Lord are there to us to read. The prayers of all the devotees who are describing the Lord's qualities as well. And not just the Lord's appearance, but the Lord's qualities are being described, his potencies are being described in the prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So yeah, fill your day up, of course, with thinking of Kṛṣṇa as much as you can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Oh, Hare Kṛṣṇa Prabhu. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Okay. It happens that when I try to meditate on the deities, I really got a problem when I hear other people chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. This Mahamantra, when I listen to it, or when I hear it, I can't meditate even upon Kṛṣṇa.
So the requirement for chanting is to chant louder enough so you can hear yourself. Now, you have to find the right place for you to chant. Some people like to hear the other devotees chant, and some people like to find a peaceful place. So if you want to find a more peaceful place, you can go to Srila Prabhupada's house. You can go to Srila Prabhupada's samadhi. Because if you're in the temple like, trying to look at the deities, then always the 24-hour kirtan is in the background. So that may or may not be helpful for you. Actually, it shouldn't be kirtan should never be a background music. If we're going to be in the kirtan, we should be involved in the kirtan. If we're going to chant japa, we should chant japa somewhere where we can concentrate on japa. So, and yeah, the deities are there for us to appreciate. But it should not be that they distract our chanting. When we chant our japa, we should be chanting our japa and concentrating on it. Because otherwise, sometimes if we look at the deities, we think, oh, isn't that nicely dressed today? Oh, look at that flower. Oh, look at Krishna's flower and Balaram's flowers are in different positions. They're not matching today. Our mind can get sidetracked in so many ways. So some people like to look at a picture or something when they're chanting, but don't let it distract you. Chanting is our main process. Meditating and looking at the deities, these are secondary processes. They may help us or they may not help us, but we must focus on chanting.
I think, ma'am, the reason behind this is that I am really very much fond of music.
Yeah, good. So when you're in the kirtan, stay in the kirtan and sing. Engage in the process.
Okay.
But when you're chanting your japa, chant your japa in a different place.
Means I will have to be in a secluded place.
Yeah, to suit yourself, you find a place that's suitable for you for your japa.
But I usually hear it.
Prabhu, you want to advance, japa is a requirement.
Yeah.
So find a way to do your japa as well. Sit in the kirtan and enjoy the kirtan for as many hours of the day as you can, but still find some time for japa.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. All right. All glories. Oh, one more.
Hare Krishna Mataji. In the purport, last sentence, Prabhupada said, if one is always able to fix his mind on Kṛṣṇa in devotional service.
Yes.
it is very easy for him to remain in undisturbed transcendental trance or samadhi. Instead of doing yoga, controlling the senses, raise a life here to the top of the head. This is best process, doing devotional service.
Yes. Yeah.
So, devotional service means, can you explain a little elaborately, devotional service means a chanting or doing some physical service?
Well, there are 9 processes of devotional service, and it starts with hearing and chanting, and even remembering. But the thing that makes it devotional service is this mood of service. I want to please you, Kṛṣṇa. So that sets us apart from the Shanta Bhaktas who just want to look at Kṛṣṇa. Oh, Kṛṣṇa, you're beautiful. They look at him. They don't actually want to serve him. But we look at the deity and think, oh yes, Kṛṣṇa, we're beautiful. I want to surrender to you. I want to give my heart to you. But there are 9 processes, and we have the perfection. Yeah. And all these devotees, Maharaj Parikshit by hearing, Sukadeva Goswami by speaking, and Prahlad Maharaj by remembering, and so forth. You can perfect your life by one of them or all of them. But of course, we're recommended to make chanting in everything. Our deity worship becomes complete, but only when we include the mantra, we include the chanting with it. I was just reading something that came on the ISKCON connection site, a quote from Bhaktisiddhanta. He was explaining how Harinam includes everything, deity worship includes everything, Vaishnava Seva includes everything, but it must be combined. Our deity worship is includes everything only if we include the mantras that we're taught by the spiritual master to include with it. If we're always, it doesn't have to be those mantras, as long as we chant the mantra. Because the mantra is our window to the spiritual world. If we're doing deity worship without mantra, then we might as well be dressing dolls. We're just in our mental stage. If we just dress to make something look nice, we may as well be dressing a doll. If we want it to be devotional service, we have to include the mantra, and we have to include a service attitude. I want to please you, Kṛṣṇa, which also includes not trying to stick a pin in him. That's also included in service. I want to please you. I don't want to stick pins in you, right? But all the processes, nine processes are there, and that's our process, and they're all in devotional service. But what classifies it as devotional service is this mood, I want to please you, Kṛṣṇa. So we can do all these things that we're doing now, but if we're just doing them because I like the prasadam here, that's not devotional service, right? But if we eat prasadam with the view, oh, Krishna's tasted this prasadam's very nice because Krishna's tasted it, then that's also devotional service. So it's our mood that makes devotional service, not the actual activity that we're doing. Yeah, consciousness. Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Kṛṣṇa bhavanam vritta. All right. Thank you, Prabhu. All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.